Now that that's out of my system, it's time to make a video. And what's on the chopping block today? Oh, shit, my video on Reach Animations crossed 100,000 views, so I guess I'm gonna have to make a part 2 on that then. Cool. I really like this series. I'd be kind of upset if I didn't have an excuse to go back in. But as for this video, when I started writing it, it was kind of aimless. It's really hard to make this many videos about a game series that doesn't really have all that much content rapidly coming out. I could talk about that damn circus and balloon action figure line, but you guys probably don't care about merch all that much given my last 2 merch videos. So what's been going on recent- Oh, I have an idea. Now, before I get started on this video, I want to start by saying that Fuhnaff is a very good content creator who's just doing his own thing. I personally think the outright spiteful comments he gets in disagreement with his theories are not cool. Although I've not met him personally, as I understand through the grapevine, he's a genuinely good guy, so there will be no FNaF slander in this video, or this comment section. With that being said, I just needed to respond to FNaF's proposed theory surrounding arguably the most cryptic of all FNaF's various mysteries. In Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria simulator, there's an arcade cabinet you can purchase called Midnight Motorist. When you actually play the game, it's a pretty simple minigame where you need to try and maintain speed and reach the end going as fast as possible. Hitting cars will reset your speed, so try not to bump into them. This is probably the most fun minigame in FNAF 6, but moving on. This game actually has a secret ending. During one of the last laps, there's an opening in the track on the bottom border. If you drive through this opening, you'll be met with a secret ending. You drive a purple car down a narrow road, and there's several possible places to go. The first is a place called Junior's, with a flashing yellow sign and a guy in green telling you can't go in. By the way, at this point I should mention your actual character is yellow. Getting back in your car, you can drive further down until you see a house, and there are a couple of different things you can do here. For starters, there is a hidden grave, or mound of dirt, accessible through a secret path. This mound cannot be interacted with, and has no clear purpose as of yet. Going inside the house, Yellow Guy is told by someone sitting on the couch to leave him alone, he's had a rough day. You can go further back into the home and try to go through the door. Yellow Guy yells at his supposed son to open up the door, but when he can't get in, he needs to find another way. Going around back, we find that the window has been broken open and there are 2 sets of footprints on the ground. One is small and childlike, and the other is clearly animatronic footprints. The Yellow Guy says that his son's gone back to that place again, and he'd regret it when he came home. And that's it. Several years later, we still don't understand what this minigame was trying to tell us. However, in one of the most bizarre instances of theory crafting I have ever witnessed, in hindsight, I wasn't really around when this was actually happening, the connection was made that orange guy was actually William Afton, the person on the chair was Michael Afton, and the supposedly missing kid was the crying child from FNAF 4. To which I ask, how did we get here? Literally the only thing that connects Yellow Guy to William Afton, who is commonly seen as the purple guy, is the fact that both of them drive a purple car. But like, every car in the main Midnight Motorist minigame is purple. I don't see how this is hardcore evidence. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. This video is after all supposed to be at least partially a response to FNaF's video, and once again, I want to say that what I say here is not to show I'm smarter than him or anything. This is just how I see things, and I do disagree with him. Regardless of if you believe my theory or John's, that's up for you to decide, and I do think both theories are valid. So to briefly summarize John's theory, he believes that Yellow Guy is William Afton, and Crying Child is the missing child. He believes that what we see in-game is the result of an attack by one of the twisted animatronics, or rather, an animatronic using the same technology as a twisted one. Funtime Freddy disguises itself as Fredbear, and abducts the kid and kills him. William then rebuilds his son as a robot, who now remembers when Fredbear killed him, leading to his fear of Fredbear that we see in FNAF 4, and also shows why he had cameras in his room as we saw in Sister Location. That's to briefly sum it up anyway. And while I think at its core this theory is pretty sound and hard to poke many holes in, there's just not enough connective fiber here for me to agree. For one of John's argument points for Funtime Freddy being disguised as Fredbear is because the footprints left behind have 3 toes, which Fredbear would have. However, that's not how illusion discs work. Illusion discs only affect the perception of those around the animatronic, which means that if this is really Funtime Freddy, he should be leaving footprints with 4 toes, instead of 3. So, not to discredit FNaF or anything, but I have my own theory that I think is more likely to stick. So, let's begin. Actually, let's start with who I think came to this window. As it's been shown before, counting toes counts. So when we examine the foot shape seen in these prints, we do have a somewhat limited roster. First up, This is a very round foot with 3 rounded toes, meaning that none of the animatronics with either square feet or feet with 4 toes will be accepted. So goodbye Rockstar animatronics, Toy animatronics, Funtime animatronics, or any iteration of Chica. Fredbear, Classic Freddy, or a Withered animatronic are still totally possible, but you know who else is highly possible? Spring Bonnie. As evidenced in the character encyclopedia, both the original Spring Bonnie suit and Scraptrap had rounded feet with 3 toes. I'm starting to feel like Matt Pet here. And to me, this only makes the most sense because William Afton is the only character who we know who would have a reason to abduct a child. It's kind of his whole thing. But then what about the mound of dirt? This mound was something that Fuhnaff used as evidence in his theory, referring to the Ultimate Guide. But what I found when I looked in the Ultimate Guide was definitely enlightening. Namely, just because Scott writes about a theory in this book, that doesn't mean it's the correct one. As in this book, he does point out the 2 sides of the same argument. William could be Yellow Guy, or Yellow Guy could be the father of one of William's victims. When it comes to this mound of dirt though, he does write that the Twisted Ones bury themselves during the day. But more surprisingly to me, was that the words Scott used to describe this mound are secret grave. Secret grave implies that there is definitely someone or something buried here, and whatever it is, it's probably dead. As to my knowledge though, never are these holes in the Twisted Ones referred to as graves. They're just holes. This leads me to believe it's not a hole a Twisted One is coming out of. I could be a bit iffy on that since I don't have my own copy of the Twisted Ones, but nowhere I looked did they refer to these holes as graves. It again disconnects the idea that whoever the missing child is, a twisted animatronic had anything to do with it. Need more proof? Well, how about how it doesn't make sense for there to be a mound of dirt here at all? As we find out in the Twisted Ones novel, the Twisted Ones are only active at night and bury themselves during the day. During the day. The game in the files is referred to as later that night, meaning that if there really was a Twisted One there wouldn't be a dirt mound, but instead an empty hole. And this is when I knew I was onto something. We've deconfirmed the possibility of a twisted animatronic being involved, and proven that technically speaking, Spring Bonnie or Springtrap could have been the one abducting the child from their bedroom. But when I say that, you might be getting the wrong impression. The second set of footprints alongside the animatronic implies that the child didn't literally get pulled out of bed, but they were lured out to walk alongside their captor. This, I think, is further proof of the abductor being Afton. But before I continue, I need to ask you, the viewer, something important. What do you think this minigame is actually about? What is it trying to tell us? Well, when I answer this question, I'd answer it by saying it's showing us another of Afton's crimes. And that is what I think the point is. In this game, there are 2 other minigames that have similar secret endings, the Security Puppet and Fruity Maze. Security Puppet shows us the abduction and death of Charlotte, who would go on to become the puppet, and Fruity Maze shows us the luring and abduction of Susie, the girl who would go on to possess Chica. If I'm right about Midnight Motorist, then that would mean all 3 minigames share an identical purpose, showing us how Afton stole his victims. It would make all 3 narratively punch harder, and further, if the character who abducts the child is Afton, and the yellow guy isn't, then that further explains why we never see any mention of juniors again. It was probably just a bar that yellow guy couldn't visit anymore because he's a violent drunk. And that bleeds into more of the narrative. It would show us why William picked this particular kid. What's one thing every victim of Afton's we've seen so far has in common? Their lives weren't very bright or cheery in the first place. They were all killed during moments of sadness, moments of what you might call agony. Charlotte, locked outside in the pouring rain. Susie, whose dog had just died in a terrible accident. And this missing child who lived in an abusive household. But I will admit that this theory has its holes. In particular, if Spring Bonnie is the one who kidnapped the child, when did it happen? We know it can't be out in the rain due to the spring locks being weakened by water. Afton would have died. My best guess is that it means this happened before it started raining, maybe while a yellow guy was drunk driving his ass through 4-lane highway traffic. But the other big thing is that secret grave. There's no real explanation for that I can reason, other than maybe implying that whoever this kid is, they had a family member pass away recently, or a pet. This could further bleed into the whole Afton chooses sad kids theory, but if that's the case, why hide it off a secret path? And what about the file name later that night? Well, while some may see this as a connection to the Security Puppet minigame, I want to point out that you're much more likely to buy Midnight Motorist before the Security Puppet, if you buy the Security Puppet at all. I think it's more likely that the two are just disconnected from one another, and the name Later That Night implies that the secret half of Midnight Motorist happens after the not-so-secret half. Ultimately, this theory isn't perfect, but I don't think it's a bad one, and would probably make the minigames in Pizza Sim as a whole seem more cohesive and, well, better. I know a lot of this video is speculation, but can you blame me? I mean, it's Midnight Motorist we're talking about. Before we get on with the outro, I do want to thank Springs, as we had discussed this before, and they did actually help me to realize Afton's motivations, even if it was on accident. So, link to their stuff down below. And with all that, I'd like to ask you to subscribe and share this video around. Thank you guys so much for the support lately. It's been a tremendous 2023 for me so far, and I feel like if I keep going the way I'm going, I'll get there someday. Until then, I'm DMuted. Peace.